In my last video, I built a mobile plywood storage cart, and it got me fired up to build another project in my garage workshop that I have been putting off for far too long. For years now, I've been using sawhorses and a temporary top as a work surface. So today, I'm finally changing that and building a dedicated workbench that's mobile, sturdy, has storage, and it's really an easy build. Follow along and welcome to Maker Gray. An exciting start to this project was to disassemble the temporary table to make room to build my new workbench. My first step in the build was to cut 10 2x4 pieces, which will be the top and bottom frames of this workbench. If you'd like to build this bench yourself, I have build plans linked down below, which include a cut list and a material list. I put my offcuts in my new wood storage cart, linked to that project below as well. I took my 2x4 pieces and cut in pocket holes for pocket screws, which is how I'm going to join these boards. Before screwing these 2x4s together, I added wood glue, which will add strength to the joints. And I utilized a square while screwing everything together to make sure this frame stays as square as possible. This bottom base frame will be covered with plywood. I laid one of my sheets of plywood down and cut it to the same size as the frame with my track saw. This can also easily be done with a circular saw. I took the time to pre-drill with a countersink bit before screwing the plywood down. This carves out an area in the wood, letting the screw head sit slightly below the surface. I'm gonna be so glad to not be working on the floor after this. Whew. For this next step in assembly, I moved the base out to my temporary work table and turned it upside down. The 4 vertical legs of this bench are going to be made from 4x4s, and I used scrap boards for mine. I then added glue to one end and then clamped it to a corner of the upside down base. This way I could very easily screw it to the base from the bottom with long screws. And then I repeated this process for all 4 corners. While I had the bench upside down, I went ahead and added the heavy-duty casters to the bottom to make this workbench mobile. I made sure to buy casters with locking wheels so it stays in place when I don't want it to move. I've linked the ones that I used down below. With that done, I flipped the bench back over, making it now right side up, and rolled it into place. The top 2x4 frame of this workbench is an exact replica of the bottom frame, which I assembled just the same with glue and pocket hole screws. I set the frame on top of the 4x4 legs, added glue, and then screwed the frame to the legs. I again used my trigger clamps to make sure the legs were exactly where I wanted them before screwing the frame down. Just like the bottom shelf, the top of this workbench is covered with plywood, which I cut to size with my track saw. And again, a circular saw would work just as well for any of these cuts. Just like the lower shelf, I secured the plywood by pre-drilling with a countersink bit and attaching with screws. I want to use my cutoffs from the plywood to build some storage on one end. And remember, I have build plans linked down below with all of these measurements. On one board, I used my jigsaw and I cut out 2 notches on each side that will fit around the 4x4 legs. This will make more sense in just a minute. Then I cut pocket holes on all of the boards. I took the longest board and added clamps on each end, which is a great way to act as feet for a vertical board and temporarily hold it upright. This little board will not only be a divider, but also a support for the shelf above it that I'll install next. And here you can see why I notched out this board to fit around the 4x4 legs. This board becomes the shelf. I added one last divider board, but this whole section could be completely customizable to fit your personal storage needs. I built the frames for this workbench, the lower and the upper, with 2x4s on their sides in this position because I wanted a lower profile. If I would have built the frames vertically with the 2x4s in this position, they would have been a lot stronger. The 2x4s how they are here in this position on their sides are totally strong enough, but there's a possibility that in the future, these long boards especially could sag. So to just go ahead and get ahead of that so it never happens, I've installed 2 more casters in the middle on each side, and then I've cut 2 braces out of 2x4s that I'm going to install on each side in the middle. That way all of this is going to be supported, no sag in the future. I've also been throwing around some ideas to build out some more storage in the middle here, and if that ends up happening, all I'll have to do is unscrew these braces, build out the storage. The vertical pieces of that build out will be enough to keep the top from ever sagging. And with that, this workbench was done. I'm so glad to finally have a workbench in my garage shop that isn't temporary. I love the large work surface, I love the onboard storage, and that the whole bench is mobile, so I can easily move it around and out of the way when needed. I have a few things on it already, but I'm looking forward to customizing it more and filling up that bottom shelf. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you build this workbench yourself. Don't forget, I have build plans linked down in the description below. Follow me on Instagram so you can see what I'm building next. And speaking of, stay tuned because I have some really cool home renovations ahead. Thanks guys. I'll see you on the next project. Oh, I totally just caught that mosquito. Mr. Miyagi, that mosquito.